So, girlfriend, what'd you do this weekend?
Well, we're getting ready for the end of the school year, and my oldest son's graduating, and we had a Marine pulley type of function where the parents met the sergeants and they got in formation, and so it's been a very
not a pulley like this where it was team against team.
And I need to find out why they call it pulley. But they get together and just kind of reinforce and reassure the parents.
War games.
Yeah. Well, not war games, but they just, it was like a family gathering for parents to get together. And it was really nice because it built up a sense of pride in me that my son is going to be carrying on this legacy that it is really touching and scary at the same time.
Sure it is for a parent, considering what's going on in our world, but if ever there was anyone who was destined to be a Marine, it's Eric.
That's right.
He is so disciplined because of his wrestling through high school,
wrestling, powerlifting. He competes in world championship powerlifting competitions. So
but he's disciplined.
He's very disciplined.
And that's, I think, a lot of what it takes. And he's strong. He's not a big guy. He's not like a muscle builder, an Arnold Schwarzenegger type, but he's strong,
physically and mentally.
Oh, Onea, your baby's leaving.
I know.
But he's not the baby.
No, he's not the baby.
But thank goodness there's one more left at home, huh?
Yeah, so we've got baseball season, and we're just really excited for the school year to start, or to end, and the summer to start, and
new lives, new chapters in your lives to begin. And you know that's partly what's going on in the world right now anyway. People are, well, of course, new things start all the time.
Right.
Kids graduate from school, go on to careers, you know, things like that happen all the time. But partly what's happening in this world today doesn't happen all the time.
No, and we're seeing a lot of transitions. I just happen to be seeing transitions with my family
in your home,
along with the transitions that are going on in the world right now.
Well, a lot of people are having mental breakdowns, emotional breakdowns, because there is an energy push pushing people to get their act together is basically what it boils down to.
Right.
So if you've got some things that need to be corrected in your life, garbage that needs to be gotten rid of, or anything emotional, mental, physical, where you have not cleaned house.
Right.
There's this energy push going on because we are moving through the galaxy as a planet at such a rapid pace that almost daily we're in different energy. So it's very difficult for people to really get used to it.
Right.
You know, every day feels like that kind of a feeling, like when you are waiting for the other shoe to drop kind of a feeling. Most of us are kind of experiencing that, and not just because of what's happening in the world, but because of what's happening in our universe.
Right.
Okay.
And the other thing, too, that I've noticed, and it's not really noticed, a recent thing, but the people that aren't able to handle it are suppressing it with drugs and alcohol, and they're completely staying disconnected from these changes, and that's not good for what is coming.
But it's not, because the best way to handle the changes of energy, because we are as a planet moving into higher vibrational energy, and vibrations are a frequency, because we know everything, every single thing is energy.
Right, and we kind of talked about that in our last show.
Our last show, and we'll probably talk about it in future shows, because it's so important to remind people of what's going on, and for us to remember ourselves and be aware of it.
Right.
So when we're going into this higher vibrational frequency, the higher a person's own vibration is, the easier it is going to be to handle the changes that are occurring in our universe, and especially over the next couple of years as we're moving into that important date of December 21, 2012 to be exact. And we'll talk about that. But you mentioned drugs and alcohol. and how people disconnect when they are using something like that to help medicate or self-medicate, or just the addiction of it all.
Right.
But drugs and alcohol lower a person's natural vibration. Therefore, they're not in that higher consciousness. And you know some of the other easy ways to stay in higher vibration.
Gratitude. Constant gratitude.
Attitude of gratitude.
Yes, and positive thinking, not down-talking yourself, constantly reassuring yourself. And you also want to be that person that creates that energy for other people around you to do the same thing.
Well, exactly, and creating is a big part of it. Number one, creative energy. Absolutely naturally raises a person's vibration, as do positive thoughts, you were saying. But if you're artistic, that's great. That's a lot of creative energy. But so is cooking, gardening, decorating. Look at you. How a person fixes themselves is creative energy.
Right.
Decorating their house.
Just anything that makes you feel good about yourself.
And you said down talking to yourself.
Yeah,
self-talk.
Self-talk, that keeping yourself down. You know, and
you're so right.
It's something that we all have programmed ourselves to do, and we don't even realize we do it.
I'm terrible, and I know it, and I'm terrible, but I'm too short, I'm too fat, I'm too this, I'm too that.
And it's simple because we turn on the TV and we see these images of perfection, when really that is not a reality.
Yeah, but have you been seeing on some of those, like the People magazine and all those rags, as we call them, on the grocery store line? That's the only time I look at them. I never buy them, okay? But all the stars, when they're caught without their makeup on,
exactly.
Hey, some of it's not too pretty,
right?
Right?
Exactly.
But let's talk a little bit more about the vibrational energy and what's happening, should we?
Yeah.
Okay, because I know it's interesting not only to us,
yes,
but it's the big buzz of what's being talked about a lot these days.
And people are now giving it a voice and also giving it a definition that we probably didn't know the definition to before, because a lot of people are starting to talk about it.
Well, years ago, some of the definition, as you call it, or just kind of guessing at things, was deciphered incorrectly. Because the Mayans the Mayans were totally obsessed with time. They had tons of different calendars, tons of different ways to measure time in a universal way, okay? Which is pretty amazing if you think about it.
Especially with the technology we have today.
And we can't get as accurate as what they were.
Exactly.
And it wasn't just the Mayans, it was also the Sumerians and the Hindu, and a lot of the ancient civilizations have been so accurate with keeping time and records, but the Mayans in particular. Well, through all these hundreds, thousands of years, they have charted a course of time, and all of a sudden it ended December 21, 2012. Nothing goes beyond that.
Yeah, that's interesting because it was so far back that just stopped at that time.
So the misinterpretation way back when was the world's coming to an end. Okay, Chicken Little type stuff. But also, I can see where that assumption would happen. I mean, it did not go beyond that date. Okay. Well, the truth of the matter is we are aligning as a planet in our galaxy at a midway point in the Milky Way, which only happens every 26,000 years. This astrological lineup that we're going to encounter on that day, which, by the way, is winter solstice, happens every 26,000 years.
Isn't it amazing and exciting that we are alive to be a part of that?
Yes, I'm excited to be a part of it.
Yeah, because I feel like I've been working on the positive and the the vibration and the good talk and that sort of thing, that I'm kind of excited to see where it's going to take us.
Well, and that's not all. Now, here's the other little thing that's an interesting point. Every 5,521 years.
Okay, pretty accurate.
Well, I did it all myself. I sat down and charted that whole thing.
I see that you did.
The Mayans had a cycle. that
Okay.
only happens every 5,521 years.
Okay.
That complete cycle always ended with some major, and I'm talking major, disaster of this planet.
Okay.
We've completed 4, and we're in the 5th.
So is the 5th going to be completed on the 21st? Is that what you're trying to say?
Yes.
Like the 5,000 years is going to be
Yes.
completed on
Absolutely.
December 21st?
That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
So we're talking about things like the Ice Age happening and what have you. Now, scientists have predicted, because the Earth is on an axis, and they actually call this time period a wobble. So it's
Okay.
like one complete wobble.
Okay.
Scientifically, they've predicted all kinds of things, but some scientists think we're going to have something like maybe another mini ice age.
Okay.
I don't think anybody knows what's going to happen.
No, we
At
can't
all.
predict it. And I'm
No.
just wondering if it's going to be a sudden thing, or
Like a
is it
meteor.
a meteor thing, or if it's going to be a gradual thing. Either way, it's not.
I think we're going to get up on December 22nd, 2012
I do, too.
and go about our business like we always have.
I think we should have a party the 21st.
Yeah, just a farewell party,
Just-
maybe.
yeah, just in case.
No, we're staying positive,
Yes.
remember. But what I do know, and you know, and many of us know, and many do not, that's one of the reasons we're talking about it,
Right.
is to get some information out there, even though it's on a small scale. But for those that are interested and have not heard, the thing that's happening as we are progressing in this, as a planet, in this universe, we're also progressing as a human race. Our consciousness is changing.
Yes.
For most of us,
For
we
most of
hope
us,
that
yes.
is true. But we do know that our children are being born differently, have been born differently, with higher vibrational consciousness.
Perfect example. Just watching the toddlers, their motor skills, their ability to talk and
smart.
read, and
They're smart.
and to just figure things out so much sooner than before.
And it's not just the intelligence, but it is a higher enlightened consciousness. Now, years ago, and I'm talking maybe 30 years or a little more ago, there was a new breed of children being born that were referred to as the indigos, the indigo children.
I've heard a little bit about them.
And they're all grown now.
Right.
They're grown with most of them children of their own. Then came along another generation with even a higher vibrational consciousness, referred to as the crystalline children. And the new ones, the little ones being born now, and our cameraman just had a new little girl a couple of months ago. She's 2 months old now. That is out of
Gorgeous.
this world. And you
Beautiful.
can look at her.
Oh,
and
just the expression on her face is just so alive, and
you can see
Yeah.
she's an old soul with a higher
she's-
consciousness.
Yeah, but she's
okay?
gorgeous too. So
And she's gorgeous. That helps too. But the new ones are being referred to as the dolphin children, which is even yet a higher state of consciousness.
And that's basically all that is to the titles of their names. The indigo to the crystalline to the dolphin is they're just higher vibrational.
Well, it is.
They're more in tune. They're
Yes.
just okay.
All of that vibration and consciousness are kind of hand in hand, as is intuition and psychic abilities, all of that kind of stuff. As we're going into this higher vibration, we're actually going into different dimensions. And when people talk about we'll be in a different dimension, the age of Aquarius is also on the zodiac, we're in a different age. But all dimensions really are densities of energy. Okay, so what we've been under, and this transition started back in the 80s. This is like not new, but it's accelerating and we're getting closer to the time. But we used to hear the term the veil is being lifted. You've heard that.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I've heard the term, but I've also am feeling and experiencing that almost exactly the way you said it, the veil's being lifted, and I'm able to not tap in or whatever the case may be, to listen to my gut feeling and realize
Which is wise.
Yeah, which I realize is very accurate every time I do that.
Intuition will not lie to you.
Right.
The brain will. So
Yes.
listening to that gut feeling, that hunch, that's communication, and you will be guided accurately. But the veil is being lifted is a term that was coined because we're going into lighter energy. So we were under this heavy, dense energy, which meant we were under a heavy curtain, a heavy veil.
Right.
So as the planet is moving and we're going into lighter and lighter energy, the veil's being lifted.
Right.
But what's happening is we're also crossing into some other dimensions, and the other dimensional things are crossing over into us. And I think we've talked about that too, because it's thinner and lighter.
Okay.
But we're more aware. We've got this higher consciousness. We're in higher vibration. And that's these children that are being born. That's what they're coming in to show us and become a different world.
Right.
Now, is it all going to happen overnight? No.
No, and it's just a buildup of. But you had said something that we were, the dimension and the line was getting thinner. Is that what is causing some of the confusion?
Oh, absolutely.
With the people that are disconnecting by self-medicating,
right,
or not listening to their intuition. They're
right.
they're staying really off balance with all of it.
You're so right, Onea. You're totally on the mark, because yeah, that is what's happening. There's a lot of disconnect going on in the world, and what we're seeing in the world, the chaos, is really all part of it.
Right.
It really, really is. Interestingly enough, when you say the word disconnect, because one of the things that's important in the spiritual growth development is detachment, detaching, which doesn't mean you detach and don't have compassion.
Right.
You keep your compassion, but you detach from things, which is not the same as disconnecting through drugs or alcohol or
right.
other ways, or mental breaks or emotional breaks.
And that's a hard transition that I found for myself, because I try to live with integrity and compassion and humbleness, and I want to make sure that I'm being compassionate to other
right.
people or situations, but I try also to stay really grounded and not absorb that energy or that negativity. So I try to keep it,
Well, detaching from mostly material things,
right.
but really even people, objects, people, things, which doesn't mean we don't love them.
Right.
Doesn't mean we can't enjoy the finer things in life, but it's your attachment to that particular thing
right.
or object or being.
Right.
And I know, Onea, you and I have talked both about keeping positive people in our lives,
yes.
surrounding ourselves with what we want in our lives, or reflecting where we are. And I know you're doing a good job of that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Weeding some out. And I wanted to just mention, that does not necessarily mean someone that's been our friend for years.
Right.
And all of a sudden, we just don't want to be around him. Doesn't mean we don't love him anymore.
Right.
What's it mean?
Well, for myself, and I know the thing that I work on is the codependency of helping somebody out more than I help myself out.
Okay.
And I've had to really try to put a balance on that, to where they need to go learn their lesson on their own,
right,
without me enabling them.
Well, that's a good word, enabling,
yeah.
right. But, nobody ever is in a relationship where they're not getting something out of it.
Correct.
It's always a two-way street,
yes.
Okay? What I think the push is about, a lot of the push anyway, for people to get their act together, is to quit enabling, to quit
yes.
the codependency, to quit hanging out with the victims and negatives of the world.
And tend to your own business.
Tend to your own business, because part of that detachment is allowing others to live their life, what they came in
yes.
to learn.
Yes, as a mother and as a wife and as a nurturing person as I am, that is something that
it's hard.
I have now grown as a person.
Well, and the growing part is, you hit the nail right on the head, actually. As I said, we're growing, and that growth is a consciousness shift. It's a different understanding of these things that we're talking about. Well, not everybody grows at the same time or in the same direction, or we wouldn't need grades in our school that we evolve through.
Exactly.
Okay. Speaking of evolution, what do you think about the brain patterns changing?
That is an interesting thing, because we had talked about in our last show the right and the left hemisphere.
Did we?
Yeah.
Did we talk about that in our last show?
Right and left hemisphere. And what I was wanting to know is it an evolution or evolution of consciousness, or is it actually evolving as a brain itself?
Well, I think it's a little bit of both. Consciousness is not necessarily gray matter, you know, it's a mind matter, whatever mind is. But I think it's hand in hand. As we are evolving consciously, we're also evolving physically.
Right.
The brain, and you know, we only use this much of our brain. Okay, in my case, it might be this much of my brain. But there are pathways in our brain that we have never even used. That are opening, and medically, they can trace that, where the brain's changing.
With the technology of the scans and...
Right. So the new pathways, we don't really know what that will enable us to do. We could all become, you know, Einsteins or Newtons of this world, but or Mozarts or Beethoven, but there are new pathways that are being opened. The brain, however, because this corporal callosum down the middle of the brain is what has separated the hemispheres.
Right.
And medically, we know that each side of the brain functions or creates different functions, okay? But we're becoming more of a whole brain being.
That's interesting. And do you think that's part of this dimensional change, that we are able to use more of our brain? Is that part of this process?
Oh, I feel all of it is part of the change and evolution.
I can't imagine us having this whole brain and only using this much of it.
Well, you won't.
Yeah.
You won't. As we're opening these new pathways and getting into this different kind of physiologically change, as well as a consciousness shift, the consciousness would be more to understand on a greater scale, a bigger scale than just physically, the oneness of all things on a big universal level. Once we have the oneness, everybody would treat each other so differently. It's the golden rule.
That is so powerful.
No.
The oneness universally, not just this world and not just you and I.
Right.
We're opening up. That's really powerful.
We could fall into, we are one, okay, kumbaya. Okay, but no, it is. It's a state of mind.
It's a state of mind. And I think we underestimate that as a human being. Yeah, state of mind.
People. But you know what's really sad? When we talked about like the cycles, the 5,521 year cycles, how they have repeated and things have happened and what have, we all say history repeats, right? Well, history does repeat, but what's so sad is we know history repeats.
We know better.
We know better, and
we do it again.
That's right.
Well, that goes back to the ego.
Ego, power tripping, all of that stuff, fear. Oh, let's talk about fear, because we mentioned how drugs and alcohol lowers a person's vibrations, and at the same time, good thinking and creative energy raises it naturally.
Right.
But fear is one of the absolute quickest way to lower your vibrations.
Yes.
And what you fear, you usually draw into your life.
And what we think about, we bring about.
That's right. Oh, I like that. Yeah, what we think about, we bring about.
So those are things that we really need to get into the practice of changing those thought patterns.
Well, as we say, change begins with you and me.
Yeah,
right? We say that all the time. That's where changes begin. But when we think, when we have a thought, because everything begins with a thought.
Right.
Right? thought becomes like a living entity. It becomes a thing. And it goes out there and creates and creates and creates. By the time we see it, it has manifested.
That's right.
You know, so
Right. And we don't know how powerful just that thought will manifest into something greater.
Exactly.
So being very aware of
our
where,
thoughts.
Yeah.
And our words. Words have so much power too.
Oh, yeah.
And I know when, you know, I'm interacting with someone, I'm not always that conscious of what I say, because sometimes things just come out, you know, whether I
Right.
want them to or not.
Right.
But I'm trying to become
Well,
more aware.
you're aware of it. And so I think if we know better, we do better.
I love that.
So-
If you know better, you do better. You know who says that all
Yes,
the time?
Oprah.
Yeah, I do, and I love Oprah. What an icon she has been in our
she's
society.
definitely brought that awareness to consciousness.
Hasn't she, though?
Yeah.
And other things too. Like, she's changed so many people's lives, but she took, and I'm not bad-mouthing Jerry Springer by any means, but this
Right.
Jerry Springer mentality of daytime
Right.
television.
Didn't bring the consciousness up.
No,
so.
she brought it to a level that was, you know, way up there of
Just-
awareness. She's going to be missed.
She's going to definitely be missed.
She'll be missed. I mean, I know she's doing other things, but it's not the daily Oprah show.
Well, so here we are to help bring up the consciousness.
Here we are on the Onea and Gertie. That's what I'm talking about show.